So, welcome everybody. Namaste to Planetary Gig Talk Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And I am really lucky today. I'm here in Studio One of the Planetary Gig, worldwide headquarters of the Planetary Gig Society, not really in the Nepalese mountains. Although that would be nice. But I'm here and very happy and pleased and privileged to be able to talk with a real sort of lifelong music educator, very creative person, Caron Collins. Caron, thank you so much for joining. It's been so nice meeting you, and we've already started some collaboration. So how are you doing?
Doing well in the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains of northern New York.
Well, hopefully I'll get up there sometime soon and meet you. We've got a few things might be planning. Um, so I guess the way that we met, as you say, virtually these days, online and all, is we had a session, a virtual session on the women's frame drummers and Lane Redmond's book, and you participated, and then were just really helpful with responding to some things. And so here we are. I think that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The internet is a great way to meet people, especially for people like me who live in kind of a remote, small area. So I'm very grateful for us meeting. Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Well, the things that I mean, just for everybody, the things that Caron is doing are so cool and that she's been doing. And so I wanted to share that with everybody. I actually talked with some of the Planetary Gig Society board members and mentioned your peace course, and they were like, "Oh my God, let's find out more about that." So that's what we're doing. Um, but my standard question that I just love because I'm curious about it is, how did music come into your life? When did it come into your life? Were your parents musical, or so there was music around the house, or did you just grab a hold of a drum or something when you were six, or how did that transpire that the spirit of music came to visit you in your life?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, my parents are definitely not musical, other than just listening to music. It all happened just one day in elementary school when a local band director came and started signing kids up to join the band. And I said, yes, I would love to learn how to play an instrument. And they had a little instrument demonstration and they gave out forms. And I was so excited. I came home with a form and I said, I want to play this instrument. And I was pointing to the clarinet, but I wrote down flute. And
Ah,
and when I picked up the instrument and opened up the case, and I said, "This isn't a flute. Flutes are these long black things." I was just totally mixed up. But I ended up keeping the flute and playing the flute, and that ended up being my instrument throughout elementary school, and then on into college. I majored in music education and became a music educator, and one of the probably at that time, long time ago, one of the very few women band directors around, because it was considered band director was considered to be a male type position, not a female position. So yeah, that's how it all started. And when I joined the elementary band, oh, this band director was really big and gruff
mhm.
and just yelled at the students and threw his baton and he just frightened us to death. And I just thought it was funny, but and he frightened all the students and I thought, well, if he can be a band director, certainly I could be a band director. And I thought, when I become a band director in a school, I'm going to take a completely different approach, which I did. And that approach was more of collaborative rather than competitive, where
Mm.
students collaborated together and created their music and shared with each other their music and their ideas, rather than the sage on the stage pounding it into the students. I was more of the guide on the side and helping them to develop their own musicality. And that's how it all began.
Wow, that's so cool. It seems like you've been cool since the get-go. You've got your little rhyming things, the on the stage and all that. So was it about, you said elementary school, so was that you were 9 or 10 or something, or?
Yeah, about 10 years old. Yeah. And then, geez, oh gosh, I've been playing instruments for nearly 60 years now. So yeah, it's been my whole life. Yeah.
Well, it's so great because for some reason in our society, people don't always get that chance, or maybe it's just interest. I don't know. I can't remember. I went to a Catholic school. Uh, I don't remember that we had a band. I don't remember we were given opportunity to play. But boy, it seems to me we'd have a better world if every human had an opportunity to play and participate, and didn't think necessarily of musicians as other people or aliens out there who do something that you don't possibly have any talent to do. So in elementary school you were in a band that you had the band leader, and then did you branch out and join rock and roll bands or anything too, or did you pretty much through school is how it your trajectory went?
Wow, it's funny how that you brought that up. I haven't thought about this for years, but when I was a teenager, I joined a rock group where I played rock flute.
Whew.
It was, and it was, this is back in the day when Jesus freaks were, all over the place. And we created this band called the oh, what was it called? The Power and Jesus Christ Power and Light group. I don't remember the exact group, but we would travel around to different churches and play our religious rock group, and I would jam out on the flute. Not anything like Jethro Tull, but I had a lot of fun. But
Oh,
and
that's
also,
cool.
and I have to say, I understand about the Catholic school situation, because that's where I taught for 25 years, was in the Diocese of Columbus, Ohio,
Hmm.
and taught instrumental and classroom music in the Catholic schools. And it was something that was not very, what shall I say, popular in the Catholic schools, but we started a, a traveling I was a kind of like a traveling band director, and went to a lot of the different Catholic schools in the Columbus area and started up band programs. So
Wow.
yeah, that's how it all began. That was 25 years K to 12, instrumental music and general music in the Catholic schools. And that's kind of where my collaborative approach to musical creativity started, was with these children, because Catholic schools, if it was anything like your Catholic schools, they're small. They don't have a lot of resources, and no big bands. So these were small little ensembles that we
Mhm.
could do whatever we wanted, basically. And we started up the junior high jazz rock group in the Catholic school. And
Mhm.
we would go to different schools, as well as to churches and to uh, hospitals, and shared music that way.
I do remember we had, I mean, there was like 100 kids in a grade and 50 in a class. 50
Oh,
kids in a classroom in at Blessed Sacrament in Chevy Chase. Um, and there was folk mass. There was a folk mass that started maybe when I was in high school, and somebody'd come in with a guitar, and that was a little more supposed to be a little more with it or modern than just the organ in the back. But from my perspective now, having learned about from When the Drummers Were Women by Lane Redman, I would just kind of ascribe this to a long-standing sort of patriarchal religions, you know, to knocking the nature out of you.
Mhm.
It's just a different kind of approach. Um, so you taught music for a long time, and one of the things we also try to talk about in these discussions is the power of music. And it's sort of a name, it's a term that, oh, the power of music, what does it really mean? And I think it means something really, really deep. But you must have seen as a teacher for all these years how did you and how did music make a difference for your students? I mean, that may be hard to generalize, but maybe not.
And it's not unique to the Catholic schools. It's probably the same in most
Right.
music education settings where a lot of, and especially in small towns and small school systems where you might have one music teacher, like I did, that traveled from school to school, and you started students on instruments, and then they came up through the ranks and into the high school, and you were their band director in high school. So you develop a relationship through music with these children. And it's almost like the music room is a sanctuary to them. Where they can come and be themselves and make music and kind of leave their differences aside, where music brings them together in a not, well, at least in the way that I did it, in a non-competitive approach where they work together and share together. I know some um, band programs are not like that way, where it's highly competitive and they have to audition for the band or whatnot and get seat assignments. No, that that's not how I worked. I worked more in, we're all in this together. Let's share and let's work together and create our own music. Um, for example, the high school that I taught in was in kind of a low income area, but those feeder schools, we call them feeder schools, the elementary schools that fed into the high school came from different areas. Some were very rich, some were very poor, but once they got into the band, all that kind of washed away. And they didn't see their differences, and they were that much because they were coming from their area, but into a neutral zone. And that's the beauty and the power of music. It kind of brings people together rather than separate them and divide them. Now, that's not saying that music can't divide. I mean, music throughout history could be used in a negative, violent way. Um, like, for instance, in some war zones, they might blast music at people and try to disperse them or whatever. Uh,
Marching
that,
bands.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it can be used in a negative way, but can also be used in a peaceful way. And that's kind of my approach. And then when I went to, after 25 years, I went back to college to get my PhD and went into teaching college for the last 15 years of my career. And I developed an approach called, and it's a long word, curious collaborative creativity. I know that's a lot. We call it CCC for short.
Mhm.
But I've developed an approach, curious. What are you curious about? What do you want to learn? Collaborative, let's work together to learn more about that music. And then creativity, how are we going to present this and share this with others and bring them into the mix so that they can enjoy it and participate too? So that approach I developed, co-authored a book with Dr. Danny Gilbert, and we have been presenting this approach across the country to different school systems. That I did for several years, and then after I retired, after 40 years of teaching, then I brought that into the community and started doing community participatory events, I guess you could say gatherings. People say, "Oh, when are you going to have your next performance?" I say, well, "We don't perform. We have informances, but we don't have performances." Informances are informal, informational gatherings, and where we learn about music and we play music together. So that kind of developed into my community type work, uh, and the Pierpont Players. That we have events throughout the spring and summer and fall. And then, but what you were wondering about is my peace building class. I could talk about that if you like.
Yeah, let's talk about just for, I mean, I think it's so beautiful what you've come up with, curious, collaborative creativity. Um, and again, we need, I think we need to clone you, to go to have to be around the world and help so many people out with that side of them that it's so wonderful when you can get in a sort of a safe space and play music with people and you're not really sure about this and somebody may be better and somebody else is more of a hot shot or whatever, but if you come together you almost always make some beautiful music.
Right.
And it's a little different if somebody wants to steal the show and all that, but it's so you basically use that as your teaching principle for many years.
Right, right, right. And it's funny that you said that you want to take that around the world. An organization that does something similar is called Musicians Without Borders. They're an organization headed in Amsterdam. I took a trip there and met with the founder, Laura Hassler, and talked to her a lot about the work that she does around the world. And it's kind of similar to what I do. Instead, they go into war-torn areas, actually, where there's refugees and suffering, and they train community leaders how to do their own music making for peace building and for healing. So it is very similar. And I met with her and I said, I would love to do something. I know that you do it more in war-torn areas, but I would love to do something with within our schools in the United States, something similar, because as you know, schools are not safe havens anymore. Students come with a lot of severe anxieties, divisions, the threat of violence every day in their schools. I would like to bring something that we could use here in our schools in the United States. It's very similar. And that's when I met with her and she said, well, you need to take our training. And I said, great, I get to come back to Amsterdam. And she says, no, it's in Vermont.
Oh.
I said, oh, okay, right next door in Vermont. So I went to the School for International Training in Brattleboro, Vermont, where they have a peace building workshops every summer. And 1 week of that is with trainers from Musicians Without Borders. And so I took the training with the idea of creating a course, a master's level course for practicing teachers, practicing music teachers to take and then develop their own peace building projects in their own schools. And it's a totally online 5-week course through the State University of New York in Potsdam, through the Crane School of Music, and they can get graduate credit for it. They take it, and the culminating event, I guess you could say, for their experience is to create their own peace building project. And they take it into their schools. And some of my past students have shared those on my website. So if you go to curiouscollaborativecreativity.com, you will see the whole program and teachers can download those projects and use in their own schools or take the course and develop their own peace building through music project.
Wow, that's so much. It's so amazing. I think a lot of people would be interested in it. So the to try to get these straight, Musicians Without Borders is in the Netherlands.
Correct.
And I did look at their website, and um, the idea of, running to Gaza or to somewhere and trying to, Gaza may be a tough one, but, seems amazing. There is um, a person, James Twyman, is he a Benedictine monk? I may be wrong about that. He calls himself the Peace Troubadour, and he's gone to play music in some, war areas. But
Mhm.
it sounds like to be able to do what they're doing is to establish some, I guess, ways for some people to develop some safe parts or some safe havens, or to really get the craziness out and focus on something positive and beneficial. Is that sort of the
Right.
focus of it?
Yes, that's the focus of what they do. They go into refugee camps. They also go into places where they can where people community leaders are trying to start community music programs, and they give them this training. And then so it's more of we'll show you what to do, you do it. And they stay there and get it started and help, and then they move on. But if you go to Musicians Without Borders, you can see the different areas where they have gone in, and they'll have examples of what they do. I I don't want to say that I'm an expert on what they do. They should go into their website to find out what they do.
Yeah, I did look at their website briefly. The State Department, the US State Department, like I think it was like early October, they came out with uh what was it, a music and diplomacy kind of an effort. Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, plays guitar, and he played a song at this kickoff, and then things got off track because of all the Gaza thing. But that may be, I wonder if there's a way to hook that up somehow.
Right,
So,
right.
but
Or Ukraine, going to Ukraine would probably be one of their next steps. I don't think they put any of their trainers, into situations where their life could be threatened. I think they go in there more towards the refugee camps rather than into the actual areas where what the fighting is
Mhm.
occurring.
Yeah, I have a friend, um, Robert, blanking on his name, which is embarrassing, but he's been to Ukraine a couple of times playing over there. So that was one thing. I'm just trying to follow the trajectory of what you were talking about, because there's so much that you have to share. So you went to the Musicians Without Borders training class in
Right,
Vermont. Was that
right.
a few years ago, or
Yes, that was, I believe, in 2019.
okay, before the
Or
pandemic?
2018. It was either 18 or 19, I can't recall. And then I developed the course, and I've been teaching my online course, Peace Building Through Music, for a number of years yet now since that training. Yeah.
So does Musicians Without Borders still have that training that they do in Vermont, you know?
You know, that's a good question. I know when COVID hit, they shut down totally. I don't know if they have come back to School of International Training in Vermont. I know that they have, in fact, they just advertised recently a training in Germany, and they have training in Amsterdam, but I don't recall if if they've had one back in the School for International Training in Vermont since then.
Okay. That would be kind of cool to do. But now back to what you said. You went to that course and you developed your own course for
Yeah.
schools in the US for peacemaking through music.
Yes, that not for the schools, but for their teachers. So the
The
music
teachers.
teachers can take the online course and uh, and then bring it back into their schools and their own peace building projects.
And I did see some of the on your website, some of the projects, but could you just describe, so how would that work? Say a music teacher does your online course, then they go back and they tell the administrators they want to do a course in this and it's offered, or how would the that kind of work mechanically?
That's up to the individual teachers. That's one of the first things we start discussing in this course is what are the issues that separate your children, your
Mm.
students? What are the issues that is impacting negatively your school or your community? And we discuss that, and then they start brainstorming, well, what can I do to help bring students together through music? They're the experts because they know their students and they know what would be acceptable in their schools or community. The text that we use to get this all started is this one, Music and Conflict Transformation, which is an excellent book that I highly recommend. That's the text that we use. It's edited by Oliver Urbane. And what this book
I'm gonna take
is
a picture of it. Is that
yeah.
allowed in podcasts? I don't know if it is or not. Okay.
Okay. Um, what this is a collection of real life applications of how music can be transformational in bringing about peace. And there's one chapter of how music has been used in a harmful manner as well, so that we know that it exists. And we study through that, and we have every day they have online questions that they have to discuss amongst themselves in an online format and in a discussion forum. And they start brainstorming ways of things that they can do in their school or their community. Now, then I also start showing them Musicians Without Borders applications, activities, musical ways that they can apply into their classrooms or their communities. And we start experimenting with those Musicians Without Borders approaches. They actually try them with their students and test them out.
Oh,
And then after we've discussed and read the book, we've shared some ideas, they've tried out different approaches, then they create a project, and the project is individualized for their school. It can be a course, it can be an after-school program, it could be a whole school festival one day where all the classes participate. They might decide to go out into the community to hospitals or wherever. It's up to the individual teacher because they know what their students need. They know what their community needs, and they use the ideas from the book, from our discussions, from the Musicians Without Borders applications, and they create their own. So if your people who are watching this podcast, if they go into my website and go into the peace building page on that website and look at the different projects, they can see how different they are. They might be a one afternoon to a whole semester of a project. And so you're free to download them and apply them to your own communities or schools.
so it's clearly has the intention and the purpose of um, alleviating, healing divisions,
Correct.
and maybe even sort of problematic or challenges for kids who've got anxiety and other things, um, in the name of peace building, but that can just be whatever it looks like in a school.
Yes, and it's also for community people too. I mean, you don't have to be a music teacher. You might be a musician that wants to start something within your own community.
Mhm.
But it's geared more towards music educators, but anybody could sign up and take the course.
Well, it's fascinating, and I hope anybody who is watching who might be interested will follow up on that, and maybe you and I can follow up in some ways. There may be some other things to do. Who knows? You know.
Yeah, as soon as the registration through SUNY Potsdam opens, I put up a link on my website where people can go in there and actually register for the course. It gets filled up pretty quickly. I would say within about 5 weeks, the course is full. So as soon as it becomes available, and that's usually like in April that they open up the start, late March, early April that they start opening up the registration for their summer programs. This is, by the way, a summer program, which is good for the teachers. It's like at the end of the school year when a lot of times, okay, what do we do now? uh, they're done with their concerts. They're ending up their school year, so it's great at that time for the teachers to practice some of this and try it out with their students, and then develop their project that they can start next fall. It runs the end of May to the end of June. So it's a 5-week course.
Wow. See, I was right that we need to clone you. Um, and we're happy to share the link, if you'd like.
Okay.
So this is all just kind of amazing, and a big download of info, and really appreciate it. We put the podcast out and see where it goes and see who listens or whatever, but really appreciate it. I do want to, before we wrap up, talk a little bit about the women's frame drumming, because that's something also that you do. And if for me, reading the book was this revelation about so many things, in particular the divine feminine and power of women, and what Lane talks about in terms of how the patriarchy kind of got a hold of that and stole some of the spiritual practices for our religions, and those, all that kind of thing. But so how did you get involved in women's frame drumming, and was it sort of a group like that, or and what have you been tell me a little bit about that, and what you've been learning, and where you think that might be headed?
That is my newest endeavor, and by all means, I am definitely not an expert. I'm just a little bit further along than at the beginner level. It's 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 almost embarrassing how I came across this. It's funny how you stumble onto things in your life, and then it just takes you in another direction.
Yep.
Um, it all started when I was looking for, and this is kind of funny, looking for drums that were lightweight that I could pack up and take to my different music making events.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I know that I've played with frame drums, in a general music setting before, and they're great because they're like these little nesting dolls. You can get, small and bigger and bigger and bigger ones, and stack them all together and put them into a case, and off you go. And so I purchased 8 of them. I purchased a set of 6, and then I purchased another set of 2. And I thought, these are great. I can take them to my peer pump players events and gatherings. And I thought, well, you know what? Might want to find out more about what these are before before I start using them, maybe in the wrong way. Well, I guess there's really no wrong way when you're making music. You enjoy it, but I wanted to learn the authentic way of the history and how it's actually supposed to be played, rather than just banging on it.
Yep.
That's when like, again, YouTube and Facebook are great ways. And I just, kind of Google searched frame drumming, and that's when all of this popped up. The videos, the Facebook groups, and then most importantly, the book, Lane Redmond's book, when drummers are women. Um, and I read the book cover to cover and says, this is amazing. And so
Yeah.
I dove into it deeper and started learning how to play it through classes, online classes um, with Lane Redmond's students. And that's how it all started. And I thought, this is amazing. This is another peace building approach,
Yeah.
new music that I never knew existed. And it was especially endearing to me because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this recording, that Yeah, when I started being a band director, I was kind of my lonely only female band director around for a while, and faced a lot of discrimination because I was a female band director, let alone a female percussionist. So I thought, this is great. This is something that is for women, was intended for women. And now I'm doing that as a part of my uh, approach for peace building.
It's so amazing. Um, same with you. I just was blown away by it. And the whole reason for the Planetary Gig Society is because one of my goals in life, peace of mind for myself, peace for the planet. It's a tall order, but music is a path to peace. But when I found this, I thought this is like because it brings in the whole, I don't know, matriarchal societies and that whole angle that's been sort of whitewashed out of our history and is what we really need right now. I thought even this is like a more immediate kind of, I don't know, path to peace is learning more about this and promoting it and discussing it. And so it's interesting how a lot of times these things come up at the same time for a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah, it's almost kismet. Like we were meant to go down this path, and I think music is the conduit for that,
Yeah.
because music is, well, I hate to use that term, music as a universal language, because it really isn't. uh, but it does connect people together. Mhm.
Yeah, it sure does. And from that, when I was in the Amazon and met Carol Santosha and find out she does frame drumming, but also they do this moon dance
Mm.
thing, which I'd never heard of. So I'm hopeful that we're going to have a program on that pretty soon, because I have a friend, an Aboriginal woman who just was in Chile and wherever doing a moon dance, and that was her first one. And Carol and her abuela have done these before, and so I can't wait to have that conversation just to add on to this, because it's really important. We can have a much sort of nicer and more chill world than we currently have, I believe. And this is one way to hopefully get some vibes out about that.
Can you imagine if the start of every political meeting started with music? You know, with if in Congress would start with just even singing a song together, or if you know, I can just see this maybe melting the edges away of the harshness that we're experiencing in the political field. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll work on that one too. We got plenty of stuff to do, Karen. But thank you so much for taking the time. It's great to know you, and I really appreciated hearing about all your things that you do. It's very inspiring, and hopefully it will be for others. So thank you for taking the time. It's been great.
And thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Namaste, everybody. Talk to you later. See you soon. Bye.